Hello, and welcome to All the Grief, a regular podcast for all those who have been touched by grief. We are your hosts. I am Rebecca Luttrell.
And I am Andrea Giron Mathern. We are two friends, a therapist, and a social scientist, both highly sensitive fellow grievers, here to share our hearts as we talk about all the grief. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Andrea.
How is your heart this morning?
My heart is cautiously optimistic, like cautiously feeling some relief. I had the flu last week and then just have really struggled in the recovery, so have felt not as good as I've wanted to feel, which has made each day a lot harder than the days need to be. And today I feel like I've turned a corner in a noticeable way, so I feel optimistic that maybe I'm done with that for now. I know things always come back, illnesses, whatever, but I'm like, God, just craving the feeling of wellness has been so real this past week. Yeah, feeling a little bit more wellness and feeling happy and relieved about that right now.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. Absolutely. I can hear it in your voice. I could hear the change. And it was just a different kind of good morning. I was like, there, she's feeling better. I'm so glad.
Thank you. How is your heart this morning?
My heart feels a little stretched in multiple places right now. We have one of our kiddos' friends coming over for a sleepover, which is super sweet, but I accidentally booked it on Bryce and I's date night. So it's just a miscommunication. And that's just a really precious night to me, to get to spend with him. We're so busy, and it's just nice to have an evening where it's just the two of us. So I feel kind of sad because next week we go out of town. I'm taking the boys out of town, and so we won't have one next week. And so I'm feeling a little pouty about that. And then, getting ready to head out next week. Next week I'll actually be recording from New Mexico, and I can't quite name it, but I feel it in my heart. And I imagine that feeling is going to get bigger as we get closer to arriving there. So I feel that on the precipice. It feels very present.
That feels really precious.
Yeah. Well, today our guest is Jermaine Ee, who is a founder and storyteller obsessed with how we spend our time, the work we do, and what we leave behind. He's currently building HeirLight, a simple and smart will maker that turns avoided conversations about family, money, and legacy into legally binding documents. So, Jermaine, welcome to All the Grief.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited. How is your heart this morning, Jermaine?
This morning, I feel a little bit stretched thin. I think my bandwidth is running a little bit low. I'm in the Bay Area in San Francisco helping my sister move home, as well as meeting clients and doing podcasts and a bunch of things. So I feel like my plate is super, super full, and I'm trying to keep it going.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. That makes so much sense. And we hope you can find just even a little bit of time out there. Is so beautiful. Well, we're so glad that in the midst of all of that, you were able to take some time to chat with us about HeirLight. But before we get started, we ask about a grief origin story. So when you think about that grief moment and the before and after, what comes up for you?
Well, it's very fresh for me because it's only been 7 months since my mom passed.
Oh my goodness.
Last August, we went on a trip together, not knowing that it's going to be the last trip. And, like all trips that we go on, we're very casual, and it's not a tight itinerary. We're just wandering the streets of Austria and Switzerland and talking about everything like we always do. And the before and after isn't as big of a contrast because in some ways we communicated a lot of things. Like I know exactly what my mom would do in every situation. I can just close my eyes and imagine what she would say to me. So yeah, everything is very fresh. That's where I am right now with my grief process.
Yeah. My goodness, Jermaine, I didn't realize that the loss was so soon. I'm so sorry.
I think my therapist tells me that I'm brute forcing through all of this, but I am on a mission. I feel like life is very purposeful, but at the same time, I thought that grief is something that you move through. But as it turns out, I'm kind of discovering new places that grief kind of shows up, and it's just moving with me, even though I don't feel like I lost a beat in life. In fact, I feel more energized, but it's still right there.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first big loss, that first time that grief really makes itself known in our life, I think that is a lesson many of us face is like, oh, this isn't a 12-step process. Doesn't matter how many gates, doesn't matter what it is. Like it becomes this moment of almost suddenly turning and you're like, grief is right there. I had no idea it was going to be around this corner. It's such a journey of discovery. That's such a beautiful way to put it.
I'm curious within the grief of losing your mom. I mean, I hear you saying like there's a way that she's still really present and that you can imagine what she would say or do in all these situations. And then there's also an absence, like the physical absence. And I think the mind, the body misses the proximity. What are you sort of discovering about your grief that has surprised you, in addition to it not being a linear thing to get through?
Most of the days I feel very grateful. So my mom, my dad, and I, we work out of the same office space. So we have like a co-working office where they sit right across the hallway from me. And so we know the same folks, our neighbors, the people in the pantry, the security guard, so in some ways, like everything that's surrounding me still reminds me of her because I actually moved to her desk in the office because I wanted to have a better view. She has a better view than I do. But at the same time, sometimes I take calls now and I see myself in that call where I used to FaceTime her and I'm in the frame of her old FaceTime calls. So,
Yeah.
and I love it. I love it. Right after this recording, I'm actually driving over to meet someone who my mom had helped a lot. And these are the things that I'm realizing now so this woman, she started a job and she had reached out to my mom. And instead of just helping her out with like a service provider, my mom had long phone calls with her, teaching her how to do certain things and set up some processes for her job. And I never talked to my mom about this. But after she passed, this woman reached out to me and said, "Hey, I wanted to tell you that when I first started my job 3 years ago, your mom was the one who sat me down and walked me through how to do some of these things, the best practices that I wasn't sure and I was insecure about." And I am still receiving all these gratitude and this appreciation and love from both business and friends. It's nice. She's not here, but she's in my everyday life.
That's so sweet.
That is so sweet. I mean, I really also, it just resonated with me, that idea of sort of like being at her desk and taking a call, a video call, and that moment, that like flipping, it's like, I'm here now. I'm so used to my mom being in this big window or whatever it was, because of the background triggered like, oh, that's the wrong face there. And the ways that, just as Rebecca was saying, like our brain is such a good driver of recognizing patterns. And so when the pattern is interrupted, our brain is sort of like, wait, what just happened? And trying to stay, I imagine, both sort of tenderhearted at like this beautiful memory of your mom and being so physically close to a space she was in so often, but also just like a longing for like, and I would be happy to switch back to my old desk with the bad view to have you here.
Yeah. So maybe start us off with a little bit about the creation of HeirLight. Was that something that came to you as a result of losing your mom, or was it something you'd been thinking about prior? Like, what was the birthplace of it?
The story really goes back to around COVID time. Like, I think during COVID time, a lot of us were thinking about life and how we want to spend our time and what matters to us. Right around 2022, I was living in New York and I would fly home every other month or so to LA to see my family and friends. And I had always taken for granted that if I missed them, I could just jump on a flight and in 5 hours, I'll be home. So during COVID, this got a little bit tricky because we didn't know if the virus was spreading. We didn't know anything about anything. And so I didn't want to just spontaneously go home and maybe get my parents sick. And so that was the first time that I felt a constraint on this like freedom of movement of like, nobody told me I cannot fly home, but I don't want to get them sick. And so it got me thinking a lot about, things that I take for granted, like the ability to see the people I love at any time that I want. And one of those days, probably summer of 2020, I was sitting at home and, we were all working remotely on our computers. And I looked around and I thought, this is kind of what I want life to be. Like, I just want to sit on my computer, do my own thing, and be around my parents and my siblings at the time. They were all home because of COVID. And I thought, why couldn't we design our lives around this? And it took us a few years, but right after, I think around 2022 was when we were able to shuffle our life a little bit. And that's when we got the office where, we each had like a little nook of our own. And across from the hallway, we all like got to have lunch together every day. We got to like just hang out all the time. So, in hindsight, of course, how grateful I am to have done that, not knowing that my mom would leave a few years after. Yeah. So during one of these lunches that we have, I had a conversation with both my parents, and it was about retirement. They were 60 at the time. And, I just asked them, like, what do you think? When do you want to retire? You've probably made the last dollar that you will spend. So if you keep working, you're kind of working for me, right? You're just working to give me the money at some point. And what I realized was that my mom in particular had this anxiety around running out of money before she dies. And this anxiety comes from the lack of clarity. Because I am the tech guy I try to build this AI chatbot with the goal of asking my mom all the questions about her life. And so that's what the chatbot did. It asked her, what were your hobbies when you were 18 years old? What did you like to do? What's like a gift that you really treasure? And a few months in, I realized if I had these information, with a little bit of organization, I was able to export a legal document. I was able to create a will for her. And essentially, what a will is a document that says who gets what after you're gone. And so that's when the concept of HeirLight started. So I started building it, and it's a long process because what I realized is like estate planning isn't about the tools. It's really just about avoidance. The most difficult thing is just people don't start the process.
Yeah.
And when my mom passed, it turned into like a mission for me because throughout this whole time that she was still with me, I was asking her questions. I really built it with my mom in mind. Someone who's a first generation immigrant. No, she was the immigrant. Actually, she moved to the United States.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like many women, her friends, like her facial lady, for example, she would go and, they would talk about what her son is doing. And what I gathered is that, a lot of women in my mom's life in particular have worked all their life and saved up every dollar to protect and to help the people they love while thinking that or assuming that estate planning isn't for them because it's too expensive, it's too complicated, or they're not rich enough. So I had this character in my mind when I'm building HeirLight. And so in some ways, yeah, even though my mom never got to use it, she got to feel the effects of HeirLight as a mission bigger than the product itself.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to, there's so much in there. And I want to back all the way up and just like how beautiful during COVID to have that realization. It just brought me back to that moment when life really, really slowed down. It was terrifying. Like there's no arguing that it was terrifying, but life really slowed down. And I feel like it was like a moment where we could reorient ourselves. Like in a world like that was probably like a before and after grief moment. And for so many of us, I feel like life just has eventually made its way back onto the former track. And I love that you and your family were like, no, this is our vision and we can make this happen, and took the years that it took to have that. I feel like that would have been my dad's dream. He died at the beginning of COVID. So I didn't get to have that with him. But I feel like after I was like, we should all live by each other. We should all be together all the time. Isn't that what everybody wants? So I just think that's really beautiful. And I can just picture it and love that you had that and can now recognize it as like, who knows why you made that happen, but what grace that you did, that you have these beautiful lunches that would have taken more and more years to have those conversations had you not seen each other so often.
I think it's the space it provided for us to have these conversations, because if I see my parents once every other month, it's typically a bit more logistical. What are we doing? Where are we going to go? What are we, it's just like logistical life stuff.
Yeah.
But because we have so much like discretionary time around each other, we got to talk about things that you don't typically talk about. So one of those things I realized is my mom loves dancing. And because she had gained some weight during COVID time, she was very insecure about going to the gym to do Zumba. And she was also insecure about her English. Even though she has an MBA from the 80s, she, like many immigrants, feel insecure to show up to a brand new place and to just like introduce herself and start Zumba dancing. So my brother and I decided that we would just go with her. And so the two of us signed up for the Zumba class with her. And we showed up to a room full of middle-aged women with my mom and started Zumba dancing. And it was very uncomfortable at the time, but it only took a lesson. And my mom was like, okay, you guys, I got this. Thanks for coming. And, I got this. And I think she would rather have danced more freely without us feeling so awkward next to her. But it's like providing that space to like get to know our parents better. I think this is something that I talk a lot about lately. It's just we really take for granted how much time we have with our kids and our parents. I don't have kids yet, but there's this chart that was made famous during COVID time, and it shows a graph of like total time spent with parents. When you're 20 years old, you would have spent 90% of the total time you would spend with your parents in your lifetime. And then when you get to 30 years old, you would have spent 95% of those times. And I just thought at the time I was turning 30 and I was like, I really want to squeeze more of that last 10% that I have or last 5% that I have. So that's really the thing that shifted my perspective about time with them.
My God, that's so beautiful. I quote that often because it's like even in the young, as a mom, I did live close to my parents, and so I saw them a lot more than sort of the average adult sees their parents and their siblings. And when I had kids, because it's like 75% of the time is before the age of 10. And then the next 15% is between, 10 and 20. And a lot of that happening before 18 when a lot of kids move out of their house. And so, but just as you were talking, I would think about like listening to my grandma or listening to my mom or dad. And it's like they lived these entire lives before they were mom and dad and grandma, and so to spend time getting to hear those stories and getting to know who they are, who they were, but also who they are. So your mom was a Zumba dancer. I love that. I love that you went. I bet the other ladies in the class were sad that you didn't come back because I think they just love an injection of somebody different, whether that's like younger people or men, whatever. Like, I think it makes them happy, but I totally understand. I'm the awkward girl who's like going the wrong direction. I'm like, fuck, I got to get out of here. But I just love that you could recognize like, hey, this, I don't know what that looks like, but if I'm even statistically average in time spent, this is what I have, and I'm going to take advantage of it. And that's such a beautiful story.
With the chatbot that was asking her questions, I've always thought that I knew my mom so well. Because I'm curious. I ask her questions. I ask my dad questions. And, my dad's still with me, so he's going to get all the attention now. And
a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. A lot of time together. We're actually now planning our annual family trip. And one of the plans that we have is the theme is a part of my mom's life. So she studied in Taiwan when she was, I think, 18 years old. So we're thinking maybe this year our family trip should be to her university in Taiwan. We'll just do that to kind of keep her in the family. But one of those things, there are just so many things about our parents as humans that, we don't really know. And actually they forget about because life is busy, right? We're just like going through life and I can barely remember what I liked when I was 18. So when I talked to my mom about this, I realized that she really, really loved Julie Andrews. Because she's a 93 baby. She was born in 1993. No, sorry, 1963.
Oh, I was like, wait, what?
I was like,
she's born.
How old are you?
So old. I was like, holy fuck. Whoa.
I'm a 91 baby, so I'm 35 this year.
That fits. 1963. Got it.
So she loved dancing, she loved singing. She was that girl who grew up in a small town in Malaysia, but she went to a Catholic school. So she went to a school for convent, right? And that's why the movie The Sound of Music resonated with her so much because she never wanted to be a nun, but she grew up around it. And she would hum to this music and she would sing it and watch the movie once a year. But we never thought she wanted to go to Salzburg, Austria until this conversation came up. And I was like, wait, I didn't realize this was such a thing on your bucket list. we can afford it. Why don't we just go? Like, what are we waiting for? And so we started planning this trip around like May, and it wasn't complicated. We just flew in. We all work remotely. So we're just like, instead of going for 5 days, let's go for 3 weeks. Let's just work during the week and then just tour on the weekends.
Yeah.
And so yeah, in July, we went to Vienna, we walked around Budapest, and then we went to Salzburg over the weekend. And as we pulled up to Salzburg, it was just beautiful rolling hills in Austria, just like in the movies. And I can see my mom like a child just looking out to the window, seeing where Maria ran on these hills. And as we pulled up to this church that she got married in, my mom kind of stopped and like looked at us and say, "I'm living in my dream." Like this little girl from a small town in Malaysia could not have imagined that, one day she'd be standing where the movie was made. And just for me, like, how many more of these little dreams can we accomplish? And both for my mom and my dad. And I think when I'm thinking about HeirLight now, I'm just like mostly grateful that I chose to work on this project. Of all the things I can work on in the world, I chose to work on this project that helped me get to see my mom as like a whole human, the child who had a dream, as a teenager who wanted to go to Austria. After that trip, I continued the road trip with my girlfriend, but my mom went to Malaysia to see her family. And I was still in Vienna, actually, when I got the call. 8 days later, she was hospitalized. And a week after, she was gone. And so, when I think back to Austria, I'm actually going back this summer. I'm going to go back to Salzburg. And I just think like, gosh, how grateful am I to have had this? And I filmed the whole thing. So I haven't been able to go back to watch the footage yet. 7 months is still a little bit fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna tell these stories someday in full with visuals and music, because I have clips of her singing, and I haven't been able to go back to that yet.
Yeah. So I feel curious because my mind keeps jumping around trying to figure out like, oh, so what exactly is HeirLight? I'm guessing it's partly kind of like creating a will, estate planning, but also it sounds like it has this really personal element of knowing the people, which feels to me personally more precious than who gets what money. It's just like, yeah, I think I've spoken about it before, but I feel this sadness. My grandmother, by the time I knew her, she was a recovering alcoholic. She was very angry, not pleasant human to be around. And then she died when I was really 20, or in my early 20s. And at her memorial service, women who had known her when she was younger were talking about her. And I was like really heartbroken to have not known that version of her, because I felt like, wow, she was a really neat woman. And I wish we had had those conversations. So as you're talking about it, I'm like, oh, I think that you're saying that you're getting some of the details you wouldn't normally ask or think to ask, to kind of have this idea of this person that's more full than your direct experience. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, HeirLight as a tool is definitely to help people make their will and their healthcare directive and all these things. So it is like legal documents. But I think the unintended consequences or effect of having these documents is this clarity. One, to know what you have. I'm a journal person. Like I've journaled the last 10 years. I've like a very, not rigid, but I have a routine that I've kind of kept up with. And I know for a fact that when I feel overwhelmed, I can sit down and journal. I have the things that I like to ask myself, and I would feel more grounded. And for those who don't have this practice, I believe, writing, there are like a little bit stoic, like writing your own eulogy, for example, is a good way of feeling very grounded, because you kind of reflect to yourself, like, what do I want to be remembered for? What are the things that are important to me? And I do that. I'm a strange person, as I don't think people wake up thinking you're going to work on an app for death. So I definitely fall in the category of someone who's like very positive about all these things. Like I'm totally fine talking about it. But for a lot of people, I'm starting to see HeirLight as more like a storytelling company. Like my goal is to tell the stories that would get people inspired to explore these conversations. And these conversations, yes, will turn into an estate plan, but also it would help you live life more fully, because you know where you are today and you know where you can go from here. And it's a bonus if you know what's enough in your lifetime, because that helps us live better.
Yeah, I
So yeah,
loved what you said when you said you started the conversation because you said to your parents, like, you've probably earned the last dollar you'll spend. And so now you're working for me. And I also I'm like, I want to save this episode forever so my sons listen to it one day. Like, we're just like, I don't mean to sound like really like maternalistic, but just you're such a loving son. I just want to say that. Like, you're such a loving son. And that idea of like, I want my mom and dad to like live these dreams, have this dream that she had of that little girl. You got to witness that memory and witness that experience of her seeing the rolling hills and her seeing the church. And now you're like, let's go here. And then let's also find out from dad what else we can accomplish, because they did create so much in their life. And I imagine what they've done for you and your siblings was incredible. But now you're like, I want you to live for you. So you have enough. You have enough. Now, what do you want from life now? It's such a beautiful question.
I think I came at this from a very practical angle. I understand why my parents want a white picket fence, a single family home, with a backyard. And in LA, that's like a few $1,000,000, right?
Mhm.
So I understand where this came from, this desire, because they moved to the US in the late 70s in Oklahoma, where everybody who's successful had a home.
Mhm.
And $2 million barely gets you a nice home in LA. For a $2 million home, you'd be paying $10,000 a month after, all the closing costs, mortgage, maintenance, everything. And this $10,000 a month is a whole lot of life, a whole lot of bucket list to check off, right? And I just keep trying to show them that just because that was the dream in the 70s, 80s, 90s doesn't mean it has to be the dream today. And I got this from, there's a book called Predictably Irrational. It was written by a social scientist, but what's interesting is his co-author, or the person who runs his business, I think her name's Kristen. She said it somewhere just randomly, not a TED talk or anything, that when she made her money, instead of doing what most Americans do, which is move into a bigger house in a gated community, essentially to isolate themselves, because now they have the resources, the means to have a bigger place, she ended up buying up a apartment complex. And what she did was she rented out the units near her to the people that she wanted to be around at below market rate. Because she, as a social scientist, understands a very fundamental human truth, which is our happiness, the highest indication of our happiness is the proximity to people that we love. And so when you make money, instead of isolating, bigger house, nanny, services, so you don't go out to interact with people, that's, I told my parents, like, let's design a life around you walking down the street and running into someone you want to see that puts a smile on your face. And that's how we designed our office, our gym, our home. Not a big home by any means. It's a condo, right? And I think these are the things that I hope to inspire people to kind of challenge themselves of, why do we chase after what we want? Like, what's the narrative that we tell ourselves that forces us to go after the things that we're going after?
Mhm.
And at the end, does it really even matter?
Right. I love this at this particular juncture. I feel like Andrea's like, you're doing it. But
Totally.
yeah, we recently decided, my fiance and I, who I will soon be calling my husband, we decided to sell his house and move back into my house, which is significantly smaller, with our two girls at a time when they're entering high school. And I was like, I want to be closer to them. And I want us to get cozy, and I want life to be simpler. And right now it feels like too complicated, too many bills. Like, how do we just start to downsize in a way that, like you're saying, I hadn't even thought of it. It's like, I was like, oh, I don't know that I'll ever spend the last dollar I'm going to spend.
Or you will be spending it like when you die.
Yeah, I'll be like, I've got one more dollar.
You $1 here.
Yeah.
Get me
But
coffee.
how do we start to have more experiences and less stuff? Like, I lived there with my daughter before we started dating, and there's community there, and there are people that, everyone's like, oh my gosh, we're going to do like pizza nights and we're going to have whatever. And it's a sweet little neighborhood with historic old houses. And it's this place that I feel like I started to move into probably around COVID, where I was like, what is the striving that we've been doing in our lives? And how do we start to shift that to what really matters so that at these moments that we realize how precious life is and how quickly everything can change, that we know, like, I'm living in a way that just feels really great in this moment. And it's not about like the stuff or the status or whatever. And it really shifted. So I love this conversation. And even like you guys realizing that at the beginning of COVID yourselves, like, what life do we actually want to live? And taking the steps towards that. Sometimes I think it's easy to kind of, like Andrea was saying, be like, oh, it'd be so great to like live in community like this. And we're all just like hanging out outside as much as possible to try to make life normal. And everyone's like, we can go back to work. And then nobody's hanging out anymore. Or, that things shift. And it's like, how do we make these meaningful shifts in our lives? And it feels so important. Yeah, I love what you're inviting in this conversation.
I mean, the last interview we did was with a death cleaner. And so Rebecca and I are really in the spring of like, oh shit, we need to really be thinking about what we have and material things in life. And so anyway, it just seems really,
it's wild.
Just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm spring cleaning and I'm like, what I would have done before that conversation and what I'm doing now, I'm just like, everything can go. What do I love? And nothing more.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I was typing down that book because it was so interesting. My dad, he was a migrant farm worker and grew up in literal 1-bedroom houses. There were 8 of them, although when they were farming, there weren't 8 of them, but there were at least 4 boys. But also just these stories of like running outside and playing with friends and all of these different things. And his dream really was a lot like your parents. Like it was like my parents wanted to buy a house and it was like they wanted a house with an automatic garage door opener. Like that was fucking the like standard, right? Like we will have an automatic garage door. And they got all of those things. And I think what my dad really longed for though was for us all to be really close to him. Like a house would go up on their block and he would like send it to me and my sister like, anybody want to buy this house? Because I think that idea of just being close, the way this woman bought that apartment complex. And after my dad passed, I would make fun of him for it. Like I was like, oh, Dad, you'd have me live in your backyard. And he's like, would you like to? We could put a tiny house back there. And after he passed, I felt the same longing. I really just wanted to be close to my people all the time. And there's it's like we're up against this tide of striving for, the bigger house, our own things, our own everything that really keep us separate. Like you have a lawnmower and I have a lawnmower, but I want my own lawnmower rather than just going over and asking you to borrow your lawnmower. Like we all want to have our own things all the time. And it's really just keeps us so separated and so isolated. So it's just such a beautiful invitation to think about like, for whom are we striving?
And we can, of course, go dig deep into this consumerism conversation and keeping up with the Joneses and all these things. But, in essence, we live in a society, a country that values GDP. That just means like, how much are you going to consume?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The entire country's health of our economy, quote unquote health, is based on the consumption of things. And when that's the case, when that's what we're going up against, it's like constantly getting sold to have more and bigger and better and newer. Yeah. And I think unless we kind of pull back a little bit and think about it, it's easy to just go on autopilot. As I said in the beginning, I'm helping my sister move right now. Back to LA. And gosh, yes, so much stuff. I'm just trying to tell her, hey, next time you buy something, please think about your wallet, the environment, and your brother helping you move. Just all of that.
Who's going to be carrying the boxes? Please think about that. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a deeper conversation. And I think that we don't think about our personal relationship to this idea of consumerism. Like we don't think about the ways that I want my own thing and you have your own thing. Like I have my own, whatever, fucking label maker. Because that way I don't have to go and borrow one from someone. Like I don't have to talk to someone. I don't have to ask someone. I can just have everything I want in my own house. And it really isolates us. And then our relationship with the environment, especially as like the idea of like really fast fashion. And it's just like, get the trendiest thing, every trendy moment. And we're not thinking about where these came from and how they got to me and where they're going to go when they inevitably fall apart. And, by the end of the season, I can't keep it through multiple seasons. So just the way it keeps us out of relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the environment, I think it's a really needed and necessary conversation. I imagine we talk to obviously so many people who have sort of taken on the death label in whatever way they have, as cleaners, as death doulas, as, writing death chatbots, like whatever it is. I imagine your family is like, okay, here comes Jermaine to talk to me about who's going to deal with all my stuff when I die. But it's such important conversation. And I'm so glad that part of your journey through the grief of losing your mom has been to reflect on all this. Although it sounded like it had started before, it really started before she passed, before she died.
Yeah, the mission started before. I think what happened was with her passing, it helped me focus in on what I want to do. So I've been an entrepreneur since maybe like 12 years old. My first like entrepreneurial thing was I used to do mix cassette tapes, and I would like design the cover and like sell it in school and get in trouble. So I've been doing this forever. And
Nice.
yeah, in all my 20s, I was just chasing this validation. So I went to a good school and my friends are successful and everyone is like doing something really cool. And I think like many insecure men in their 20s, I was just like, success will solve everything.
Yeah.
That's the mindset, right? Like as long as I'm successful and rich, or at least perceived as, that all my problems will go away. So I did that all my 20s, and I'm really lucky in so many ways that in my 30s now I'm finding something a little bit more meaningful. And then, with my mom's passing, this just became like a mission. So yeah, a lot of days I think about like, do I really want to talk about this every day? I don't mind it, but sometimes I feel tired of my own voice. Like I don't want to say the same things in different variations over and over again. But I keep getting reminded. Like 2 weeks ago, I was sharing a story with a journalist about HeirLight, and she stopped me suddenly and she was like, can you tell me how did your mom pass away? And I was like, oh, it was this kind of stroke, exactly a cerebral hemorrhage in the back. And then she just stopped and started crying. And I was a little bit confused. As it turns out, she had the same stroke. And she told me that she's lucky to be talking to me. She's not supposed to be alive. And in my journey, this very short journey, it's only been like 7 months of being out there really talking about HeirLight, I've come across so many instances where I shared a story, it resonated with someone, and it moved someone to do something. And I think that's what HeirLight is. We're like a storytelling company. We're just trying to be out there to remind people of this very short time that we have in this life, in this world. And no matter what religion or spirituality you believe in, like we're ending all in the same place. And what are you going to do with this short time that we have here?
Yeah.
So yes, get your legal documents done. It gives you clarity, but at the same time, also live a little bit.
Yeah. There are a couple of phrases that you use too, which are really beautiful, but I'd love to hear sort of what they mean for you, especially in your work with HeirLight. So one of them is that there are invisible inheritance that our loved ones leave us. Can you talk a little bit about that? I just love that phraseology.
Yeah. This started actually with my grandma because we spent a lot of time together. My grandma is 92 and she has dementia. So her brain is plus minus 15 years old. So that's the teenage girl that she used to be. For my grandma, though, being 15 means that it was the time when the Japanese invaded Malaysia. So she remembers things that are very dark and quite fearful, a lot of it. So she's like kind of paranoid, but it's also a function of dementia.
Yeah.
But in the past 6 years that I've like got to talk to my grandma a little bit more, I have like kept my iPhone voice memo on and like started asking her questions. And I like tease some questions out of her, which are a little bit funnier. Like, who's your favorite child? Which is your favorite in-law? Like I have all this on record. I'll never share it with my family, but it's just interesting to hear her breakdown of like her first impression of, which uncle's wife. Like, I'm never gonna say
Mm,
this, but also it shows me like her worldview and how it informed how my dad's worldview was. And I think these are like the invisible inheritance. It's like not the money, but the values, the stories, the perspective, things that we pass through live experiences.
Yeah.
And for my mom, it was, my mom is this like crazy empathetic person. Her EQ is just off the charts. And we grew up watching her like this distinct memory is just maybe 10 years ago, we were driving somewhere in LA, and LA doesn't rain that often, and it was raining. And she just got off the car in the rain to help push another car that was stuck on the side of the road. And I'm like, well, we definitely didn't have to do that. So it's like these invisible inheritances, how to treat people, I think since my mom's passing, my girlfriend and I, we walk in LA and we see a homeless person and we look at each other just without even saying a word. We know what we're thinking. My mom would have stopped. And so we
mm,
would go back to the car and find some cash and delay our day by 10 minutes. But these are the invisible inheritance that we talk about. Things that we never write down, but we carry with us.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
yeah. I remember having a conversation with my dad's sister once, just trying to kind of gather information about my grandparents, like things that I just didn't know. And she was talking about the biggest lesson she ever learned from her mom, which I thought was going to be an overt lesson, but it was one of witnessing her dad really mistreat her mom and her mom and she was a 13-year-old watching this and thinking, we're going to leave him. We're going to get out of here. And her dad said something like, don't leave me. And she was like, she's done. We're out. And her mom said, where would I go? What would I do? And she was like, I learned in that moment never to depend on someone else for my well-being, like that
Mm.
you could be trapped. And what was so interesting about her telling me that story was that lived in my bones without having any experience like that in my life where I was like, the only person you can depend on is yourself. Like and I had this like hyper independence that was like, do not put your well-being in anyone else's hands. And it's like, here's how my aunt was carrying that here. And then I can think of how my mom carried that and but it was just unspoken. No one had ever told me not to do that. And I had not witnessed anything that told me not to do that, but I carried it. And I was like,
Mm.
whoa, we carry these. It's like, this is how you bake a ham. We just carry these stories that we don't even know they're not ours. And what becomes possible when we're like, oh, actually, the true nature of me is to live interdependently, to like be able to lean on people, that people can feel safe leaning on me. That's what's more true. Yeah.
I'm very bad at receiving gifts and help. I'm
Mm.
very, very bad at that. And I think it came probably from my mom. I think she's just so independent. All that said though, I think now that I am thinking I'm probably gonna have kids in the next 3 to 4 years. And I really think about all these things because I wonder which one of these and how I show up as a father
Yeah.
eventually and the things that I want to pass on. But yeah, I think a lot about these things. It's like looming in my journal. And of course there's the thing of like, oh, how do you raise kids that are not entitled and things like that. But beyond that, it's just like, how do you raise humans that are confident in themselves? I'm very lucky in the sense that my girlfriend is Ukrainian. Her country is going through war. And she was there in the morning that the war started,
Mm.
right? And she's very strong. I don't know how she does it emotionally to wake up every day and keep going when she could have easily just been defeated and just be like, I don't want to do anything. But some things that she taught me are like, she used to ask me, why do you feel like you have to earn the love of everyone around you? And it took me a very long time to realize this, that her culture and our culture, I guess mine being probably equal parts Asian and equal parts American,
Mm-hmm.
it's very materialistic, right? Your net worth is like what you're able to produce, your
Mm-hmm.
worth to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember clearly her telling me one day that like in my family, you're loved just because you don't have to prove anything. And it was a very strange concept for me. especially after spending, I mean, I feel unconditional love at home, but when I step out of the house, I know for a fact that my worldview has told me that like I am only good in this society if I'm able to build something, to do something, to produce. So yeah, it took me a very long time. And the other really fun thing that I learned from my girlfriend is just all my problems are like first world problems.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone to Kiev to visit her family twice, and each time I'm just amazed by the strength of the people to show up to keep living every day when there's literal missiles flying in the sky, and just to be like grateful and to keep going. I wouldn't say everyone's happy all the time because it's
Right.
really hard to be. Things are so out of your control. But a lot of people that I talk to in Kiev has super inspiring to me just to, things happen just because, and you don't really get to control them, but you get to control what you do with it. So
I love that idea, like weaving that into the other ways that we receive invisible inheritance. It's not just our direct lineage, but just coming in contact with the book, having your girlfriend tell you things that you're like, whoa, like that just shifted my worldview, and experiencing other people in different realities and sort of, yeah, having a wake up call about like, what am I complaining about? Or and then the way that that thread is going to live on through you. So it's just such a beautiful, I mean, it is that web of interdependence that we need each other, and we need to give each other these gifts of conversation and story.
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
as I'm working on HeirLight, I also come across this fact that because we are such an individualistic society, that a lot of people are aging alone. A lot
Mhm.
of elderly spend so much time alone.
Yeah.
And I think it is so American,
Yeah.
right? Because we're
Yeah.
so individual. We want to express ourselves and have our own clothes and things and house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we tie so much of that self-worth in like the ability to have our personal space, for example. Yeah, I see this as I'm talking to folks in adult daycares, for example, because I'm trying to get HeirLight into adult daycares so that people can start working on it.
I love that.
I have this equally wholesome strategy on HeirLight, as well as this like I am cold emailing funeral homes, adult daycare credit unions with the intensity that, you expect out of someone like me.
Yeah, right.
So I'm having like equally, not transactional, but just like, hey, look,
Mhm.
a lot of people are going to be alone. They're probably going to leave a lot of things behind. Like, let's figure out a mechanism where we can help them get this
Yeah.
done. And these are like real conversations, and it is a business. So I got to pay all the lawyers that billing me every month.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of thoughts. I remember I used to work at a large museum, and there were things that we were doing, and I'm also a social scientist, and I would just say like there are many approaches to getting to the same end. And one of them, we live in America, one of them is the bottom line. And so if that's the argument I need to make to you to understand why we're going in this direction, that isn't why I'm going in that direction, but I understand it because I live in this culture, and so I can do that. And here is the story that brings your heart along. And not everybody's heart is going to go along. So I totally understand needing to do both of them, And the loneliness, I mean, it's so intense. After my dad died, my mom was alone, and I did everything to try to get her to live with us. We were like, we'll build you an apartment above the garage so you can still have a semblance of independence. Like, what can we do? But because she sort of came in the same, at least generation, if not the exact same experience of your parents of like, no, I own my own house. I want my own house. I want my own kitchen. I want my own fridge, really not being able to let go of that for the sake of something bigger, which was, I would send like scientific articles that say multi-generational homes are beneficial to all three generations, to our mental and emotional wellness for all three generations. And so to me, it was like, what a beautiful gift we've been given because of the way she was sort of oriented to materialism and hyper independence, and that being what made her strong. She was really unable to ever even pretend to entertain that idea. The invitation, I think, to all of us is like, how do we want to grow old? With whom? What's the apartment building? Who do we want to see? I love your question to your dad. Like, who do we want to see when we go out to get our cup of coffee or buy our bread or whatever it is? And how do we position ourselves to be able to do that and rewrite the narrative of hyper-independence and really see the beauty in leaning on each other, like you were talking about, Rebecca. So,
yeah, I am noticing time. Is there anything else, Jermaine, that we haven't asked you about or that you want to be sure to include about HeirLight?
I mean, I'm easily found online, so if something resonated, I'd love to connect. We're a very young company, so it's an app, it's online, it's everywhere. Beyond the technical side of it, it is this message out there that we talked about today. I kept thinking, like, what can I just build something that's a projection of the conversation we have today? It's basically what I'm trying to do. And I think having a legal document is just a very tangible way of like giving someone a tool. One of the things that we're working on with HeirLight is, depending on when you log in, it's a different varying level of rigidness versus storytelling. Like, I've had people come into the app and want to just get the will done. And they can, but then it removes like the conversational piece of it, the part that I started with. And now I think if you log in today, it's slightly in between, but we're actually trying to switch it more back to the conversational side a little bit just to see what works better. Yeah, so it's been fun. So if you're curious, it's free to try. And when you're all done, then you can pay to export.
We will be so happy to try it and happy to share. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
It's been such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah,
it's been so wonderful.
It's been so sweet. I have been closing us with pulling a card from Planet Grief deck that's been created by two sisters, Orena Green and Brianna Rose. And they have different sort of grief prompts. These that I pull from are the conversation grief prompts. And the one that I have today, when we speak of someone's essence, we offer words that provide a sense of who they were. We describe the inner foundations of their personality. How would you describe the essence of the person you lost to someone who never had the chance to know them? Andrea, do you feel ready?
I'm already crying. I mean, immediately I thought of, we've described my dad this way a lot, as an oak tree. Like, he was very much like that sort of steady foundation of our family. And he was so fucking patient. Like, he could just stay still forever if that's what you needed. He was unbelievably patient and really wise. Like, everyone would go to him for advice. I spent a lot of time going to him for advice and then abruptly not doing what he told me to do. But he was just that person, like old, wise. And I oftentimes find myself really, really just missing the steadiness of him. So yeah, it would be an oak tree.
Thank you. I love that. How about you, Jermaine?
The first thing that came to my mind is kingdom. But in a strange way, I think it's actually the combination of my parents. It's their ability to make us believe that once we come through that door from the outside world, that the home was a safe space. And it is the combination of my dad being relentless in his pursuit of business and things to show us that we can also be brave and keep trying, but equally having my mom balance on the other end to show us that you don't need to be anything at home. You just gotta come home. I think that's the thing that I probably miss the most.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Jermaine. Rebecca, what's yours?
Yeah, with my dad, I feel like the essence of him is playful, kind of trickstery, like a little sparkle in his eye, like mischievous, and he was the youngest child. And, I think in a lot of ways was sort of had that youngest child energy, even as an adult. Like, what's standing out to me as I think about that was when he died, they did an open casket funeral, which I would not want for myself, or like, it's not a thing I even thought I would have wanted. But seeing him in the casket, I was like, oh my God, he has this permanent mischief smile on his face. Like, I don't know how whoever the person is that does the mortician
makeup.
Yeah. I was like, they capture it. Like, I need to go tell this person, like, you captured it. And I was like, I'm actually expecting him to sit up and be like, just kidding. And that would be him. That wouldn't be beyond him to do something like that. So yeah, just like that really feels like the essence of him. Whenever I strip away all the complicated nature of our relationship, that there was something just sweet and playful.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Jermaine. This is so beautiful. We will be sure and make sure everyone can find you all over the internet. And as things progress, we hope you'll stay in touch. This has been such a beautiful conversation. So thank you. Thank you to our listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of All the Grief. You can find us on Instagram at allthegriefpod. And please take a moment to rate our podcast and share us with your friends. We'd love to keep expanding our reach to all the people who could benefit from conversations on grief. Take care.